Many of us grew up with soup out of a can, and there's usually nothing wrong with that if you can handle the amount of sodium or choose the lower sodium varieties. But today we're going to take a tomato soup made from scratch that doesn't resemble anything like you get out of a can. What we're going to do is start with some Italian sausage, and I've got about a ½ pound of Italian sausage. You can choose either sweet or the hot kind based on your own preference. It needs to be cooked ahead of time, and you can cook it in a little bit of oil in the same pan that we're using for the soup, or you can cook it on the grill and save it. It's a good idea if you're going to do this to kind of plan ahead, and if you're making out on the grill anyway, go ahead and prep this up at the same time, then bring it in, make sure you chill it well until you need it for this. It'll keep for a couple of days that way. The next step we're going to use here is to add about a tablespoon of vegetable oil, preferably olive oil or something with a similar nutrition profile. And this is going to make a big pot of soup, so make sure you start with a plenty big enough bowl. I've got 4 large onions, or yellow onions, that go into there. I've got 5 cloves of garlic that are fairly well chopped. Now, the amount of chopping that you do on this is totally up to you. If you want the soup with smaller pieces, go ahead and chop it finer. If you like bigger chunks, go that direction. Also to this, I have 4 bell peppers. Now, because this is something that you might want to make in the middle of winter and would be very good then, remember that several of these things that don't keep well just in the refrigerator until winter will keep well via methods of preservation. Both the onions and or the green peppers can be harvested during the fall when you have an abundance. And then you can put those into the freezer, chopped in the correct amounts for this soup. Just label it for this soup. And then when you're ready to go, you just open it up and use it directly into the soup. Pepper, I've got about a ½ teaspoon of black pepper. We're going to put this together, stir it well, and then we want the vegetables to soften up. We don't need them to brown a lot, although you could do that if you wanted to, but since there's so many in the pot, there's going to be a lot of juices coming out. They're going to be more simmering than sauteing anyway. So what we're going to do in order to just soften them down is put a lid on the pan and let them simmer for 10 to 12 minutes just until they're softened enough. After you've let it steam for a bit and soften up or sweat, we're going to go on with the next phase, which is to add about 1 quart and 1 pint of canned tomatoes. Now, if you've canned them in diced or crushed, either method will work, or you can use whole as well, but you'll need to chunk them up a bit. If you still happen to have some fresh, you could go that direction too. Remember the advantage of using the tomatoes in a cooked form, as you're most apt to do during this time of year, is that you're going to get more lycopene from them. And that's also one of the reasons why I didn't reduce the amount of vegetable oil in the initial part of the recipe as much as some people might, because I want to have some fat there. We're going to get some from the sausage, but we're not going to get as much from the sausage as you might think, because we cooked the sausage ahead, and that pulled a lot of the fat out of the sausage during the cooking time, which is the reason at the initial phase that you want to make sure and cook that sausage well done, even though it would have plenty of time to finish cooking here. I wanted to brown it to develop some flavor, but then I also wanted to go ahead and have as much of the fat rendered out as I could. I've got about 3 red potatoes here that I'm adding. I'm leaving them in fairly big chunks, but again, that's up to you. We're going to stir those in just a little bit, and then I'm going to add 1 quart of water. Notice that we do need a very large pot for this if you're going to cook the whole recipe. It's one of those you could easily cut down in size, but if you're going to use the whole thing, then start with something big. I also have a tablespoon of fennel seed. Now, fennel is one of the primary flavors that you're going to get out of the Italian sausage as well, so that even if you decided to do this in a vegetarian format and not add the sausage later, you're still going to get a lot of that Italian flavoring to it. And then I'm also going to throw in 1 bay leaf. Now, the thing to remember about the bay leaf, of course, is that you do want to remove it at the end, because that long stem through the center of it, if someone eats that, that can in fact cause them some health problems. If it gets into their intestinal tract, it can actually pierce the intestine. So do remember to take that out later on. Now, this you would cover and let simmer for about 30 minutes to let the flavors develop, and then we would add the sausage and again let that continue to simmer for another 30 minutes. The potato is not going to overcook, surprisingly, because of the amount of acid coming out of the tomatoes. So the potato is still going to be fairly firm, also the advantage of using a red potato. For our purposes, to save a bit of time today, I'm going to go ahead and add the sausage. Remember, you'd let it simmer for 30 minutes covered before you did that. I do have one made ahead, so let's see what it looks like when it's all done. You can see here the potatoes are still in good, nice chunks. The sausage is pretty big pieces, and so this makes about 8 servings. You're going to want to make sure that everybody at least gets one nice piece of sausage for flavoring and for the full effect of the soup. It's good for you. The fat content is fairly low. Vitamin C and vitamin A are also very, very high. It's a good way to use up some of those things that you've stored away for winter, and now you need them. You want them to stay warm and enjoy a nice lunch in the dead of winter. This is a good way to do it. For Oklahoma Gardening, this is Barbara Brown.